Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Roberto Corona. I am an Italian anthroposopher and astrologer, and in this video we're going to talk about the third Mercury retrograde of 2024. Now in this picture here you can see the orbit traced by Mercury in the sky from a geocentric perspective from the Earth, and as you can see it creates sort of three rings, three loops in the sky, and this happens 3 times a year and lasts roughly for 3 weeks. So highlighted in white, you can also see the points where Mercury makes a conjunction with the Sun. It can be a superior conjunction, an inferior conjunction, and altogether these conjunctions create this beautiful pattern, which is a 6-pointed star in the sky. Now, as we've said in previous videos, what's special about Mercury retrograde in 2024 is that it will stop in all 3 fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, creating a so-called elemental triangle of fire. Fire, which is the element of the will, the element of inspiration, passion, but also of conflicts and fighting. Now here you can see a list with the dates of Mercury retrograde during the year. So we had, as you know, Mercury retrograde in Aries from April 1st to April 25 during eclipse season 1, which was a very intense Mercury retrograde. Then Mercury stopped between Leo and Virgo during August, and now Mercury is going to turn retrograde in Sagittarius from November 26 to December 15. Now, here you can see the different phases of Mercury retrograde with its 2 stations. The first station at 22 degrees and 40 minutes Sagittarius, and the second one at 6 degrees and 23 Sagittarius. And this area in between is the so-called shadow zone. So Mercury still direct. It is going to enter the shadow zone on November 8, right? So it is direct. However, it is slowing down, so its effects are going to manifest sooner than the date of its first station, which is November 26, when Mercury is going to stop, turn retrograde, and this line that you can see in red is the time when Mercury is going to be retrograde in a real sense. So this is going to last until December 15, reaching 6 degrees 23 Sagittarius. Mercury is going to stop again and turning direct, but it is going to be still in the shadow zone until January 3, 2025. So in general, Mercury is the planet, as we know, ruling thinking, the mind, communication, all interconnections, the streets, public transportation, and so on. And for this reason, at a physical level, Mercury retrograde can cause delays, slowdowns, and also misunderstandings. And this is because the cosmic mind, represented by this planet, turns inwardly and generates this frustration every time we want to insist dealing with the external world rather than focusing within. That is really what Mercury retrograde is asking of us. And in particular, since Mercury is in Sagittarius, it will make this time 3 long squares with Saturn that we know Saturn is in Pisces. And this means that in general, it is not advisable to travel in, particularly challenging, inaccessible places, because Saturn can definitely make the trip very complicated, if not even risky, right? So we want to avoid that. And later we're going to provide the weeks in which we're going to have these peaks of these 3 squares. Now, dealing on a soul level, on a psychological level, Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius could bring us some difficulties, some challenges on a mental level, as far as learning and studying are concerned. It is a transit that makes it more difficult, to commit to exams, all the tests that involve us from this perspective. And again, it is the 3 squares with Saturn, the problem here, that are going to make this transit more difficult. especially for learning and studying. Now, remember that on a psychological level, it is also quite important, to not talking too much this time. I'm saying that because Sagittarius can do it. Sagittarius is a talker, so Mercury retrograde in this sign can bring, misunderstandings because we have maybe talked too much, we have not let the others speak, we have said, we crossed the line. So basically, we want to remember that a greater care must be taken when it comes to communication during these Mercury retrograde periods. On a spiritual level, actually, Mercury retrograde can be quite useful because it is very, very good for introspection, for shadow work, because this energy allows us to turn our minds within in order to understand and solving internal rather than external issues. So we can definitely make a good use of Mercury retrograde in this regard. By the way, this is especially true for Mercury in Sagittarius, because Sagittarius grants Mercury with all the knowledge and also psychological understanding to address this psychological issues. So this is very, very good. Now here you can see the chart of the first stationing of Mercury happening at 22 degrees Sagittarius. And we have to say that usually Mercury in Sagittarius is bad, right? Because it is debilitated. Mercury in Sagittarius is in its exile. And usually it represents a mind that sort of, gets lost in an excessive intellectual speculation, in this philosophical thinking, rather than solving practical issues, right? And this is what the intellect and the mind is supposed to be doing, to solve practical issues. And so when Mercury is in Sagittarius, it's like, all over the place in this regard. However, this weakness in this case does not appear because we have a very good configuration. So this is a mutual reception between Mercury and Jupiter that is happening through these opposition that the two are going to make. So mutual reception in a nutshell is this: the two planets are receiving each other in their respective zodiac signs. So Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, so it is receiving, it is welcoming Mercury in its sign, and vice versa. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, and he is receiving Jupiter, as a guest in his sign. So basically, they are in each other's house, and they are, in a sense, collaborating. They're working together. I would say that they need each other. So even though these are going to be three oppositions, they can be quite good. They're not as bad as it could be. On the contrary, some astrologers are of the opinion that a mutual reception resolves any issue whatsoever, and I tend to agree with that because of my experience. So this is the chart of the second stationing happening on December 15, when Mercury is going to stop at 6 degrees Sagittarius and turn direct again. And this chart is very interesting, not only because of that, but because it is happening during the next full moon in Gemini, happening on the same day, December 15. And of course, we're going to talk about that in a dedicated video. Now, what we want to address in this chart is another important aspect that Mercury is doing. So as you can see, Mercury is creating this trine with planet Mars. And we want to point out that by then, Mars will also have become retrograde at the first degrees of Leo. And this is important because, as you can see, Mercury retrograde is creating a trine with Mars retrograde. Now, this is definitely very important, especially the first week of this aspect happening, because the two planets, both retrograde, can be quite challenging, especially in regards to fighting, right? So let's now recap all the aspects that we've been mentioning, because we want, through, a little time map to see what's going on, right? So here you can see both the aspects of both November and December that Mercury is going to make. And the long opposition between Mercury with Jupiter immediately stands out. You can see that in orange, this very long wave, right? That is going to have 3 peaks here, here, and here. And we're going to provide the specific dates later on. But basically, we're talking about that opposition involving a mutual reception that we described before, right? So this is not so bad, even though we have to say these moments, these peaks can definitely correspond to the periods in which we could, exaggerate with communication, saying too much or saying too many things. So we want to avoid that. So extra care in this regard must be taken, right? However, these peaks are also quite favorable for introspection and shadow work, as we said, because of the contribution of Jupiter, being Jupiter the planet of wisdom. So this wisdom is definitely quite useful for shadow work, right? Moving on, we have highlighted in red these 3 squares with Saturn, and these are the most challenging aspects of this Mercury retrograde, which include the week of November 12 here, then the week of December 7 down here, and the week of December 27 here. So be careful with traveling during these weeks, especially under, Christmas and holidays, because there could be issues called by Saturn. And in this regard, this is one of the worst configuration here. And finally, we have in green this central part that you can see here covering from December 7th to December 23rd. We have the trine between Mercury and Mars. And as I mentioned, the worst week is the first one from the 7th to the 15th, and this is because they are both retrograde. Mercury retrograde activating Mars retrograde. So we can expect the greatest challenges in regards to fighting and misunderstandings here, because Mars is the god of war. And when Mars is retrograde, it is particularly frustrated. So we want to remember that, right? Of course, we will talk about Mars retrograde in a dedicated video, but this week can be quite intense. So here we have a summary of the most important dates. So first stationing on November 26th at 22 Sag, and we are already in the shadow zone. Then 3 oppositions with Jupiter favorable to introspection and shadow work on November 18, December 4, and December 26. 3 squares with Saturn unfavorable for traveling, trips, and so on. So be careful, especially during the dates around November 12, December 7, and December 27. And then we have a trine with Mars, and the worst period for, arguments and so on, fighting, especially from December 7 to December 15. December 15, the day of the second stationing of Mercury at 6 degrees Sagittarius. As always, thanks for watching. If you want to support my work, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell not to miss out on future astrological insights. I am Roberto Corona. See you in the next video.